Yeah, we're waiting for Urvashi Kuhad now. Yes, ma'am. We can see you.
You can
Now
see
we
you.
could see you.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
ma'am.
Very distinct.
Okay.
Yeah. Very bright you are looking though.
It's coming.
Yeah, we're waiting for Urvashi to be here. Pragati, can you see Urvashi around?
Oh, so I'm also trying to find her out for the last 15 minutes, but I'm also not able to find. I'm just trying, sir.
Do you have a number? We can give her a call.
Yeah, that
Yes,
we can do.
I made a
Just a minute. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just continue. I'm just contacting her.
Yeah.
Yeah, let her be in, then we shall start. Otherwise, there'll be some disruptions. Still a bit of time.
Sir, I wanted to give her introduction also.
You can introduce Mamang Dai. Okay.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I hope she will join. She has sent me a message that she will join. Okay. Please introduce. Okay.
Then let me begin the whole thing in a way. Yeah. Of course, first of all, I thank and express my gratitude to Prof. Tirtha Prasad Mukhopadhyay, the founder and president of Rupkatha Conference, and of course, Tarun Tapash Mojumdar, editor of the Rupkatha Journal, for this rare and privilege and honor to be part of this magnificent academic event. And also special thanks to both of them for having given me this opportunity to be in conversation with Mamang Dai as part of the critical dialogue session of this second Rupkatha International Online Conference 2021. I have with me, let me also introduce Urvashi Kuhad, who is an assistant professor, University of Delhi. She did her PhD in Indian science fiction. She is a Fulbright fellow who was at the University of Texas at Austin in the USA. She was also in the University of Western Ontario, Canada, as a fellow. Dr. Kuhad is widely published, and at present, one of her research and teaching interests is Northeast literature. Yeah, so let me continue. Is Dr. Kuhad in?
Very, very good evening, sir.
Hi. I just have introduced you. Yeah. Now let me proceed with today's session. Welcome to the critical dialogue session of the second Rupkatha International Online Conference 2021. We have amidst us one of the most versatile and charismatic writers known for her deeply rooted poems and lyrical stories. She is one of the first and the finest novelists writing in English from India's Northeast. Born in Pasighat in Arunachal Pradesh, did her schooling in Pine Mount School in Shillong, Meghalaya, and did her graduation from Kuhad University. From Arunachal Pradesh, where we have India's first sky, the land of the rising sun, she was the first woman to become an IS in 1979, the coveted civil service position in India. But she would leave the job to dedicate fully to her passion, that is writing. She had also worked for the major national dailies like the Hindustan Times, the Telegraph, the Sentinel, and others. Recipient of one of the highest civilian awards of India, Padma Shri, in 2011, her first major work of fiction, The Legends of Panzer, published in 2006, made an audacious entry in the world of letters with a unique way of telling stories, which would form what is known in the academic circles as the quintessential Northeastern literary discourse. Her novel, The Black Hill, where history, myths, and memories merge into a narrative totality, got her the prestigious Sahitya Academy Award in 2017. The first from Northeast to get the award for an English novel. Earlier, Dr. Temsula Au got the award for her English short stories, Lebanon, for my hit. She has also received Varier Alwyn Award for her book, Arunachal Pradesh, The Hidden Land. She's a poet, novelist, also a folklorist. Her collections of poetry include river poems and midsummer survival lyrics, and also the novel Stupid Cupid, as well as her other works. One is Mountain Harvest on the foot of Arunachal Pradesh, Humbrilla Mice Loom and the Sky Queen and the Once Upon a Moon Time. It's a folklore for young readers. She has recently edited a collection of women writings from Arunachal Pradesh, Inheritance of Words. Magical lyricism is one of the hallmarks of her abiding prose. Her pensum, The Place in Between, is described by her as the small world where anything can happen and everything can be believed. Where the narrow boat that we call life sails along somehow in calm or stormy weather, where the life of a man can be measured in the span of a song. For her, all that matters is love, and that memory gives life, and life never ends. This is, ladies and gentlemen, Mamang Dai from Itanagar, Arunachal Pradesh. I welcome Ms. Mamang Dai to this session of Critical Dialogue as part of the second Rupkatha International online conference. Also, I welcome my co-host again, Urvashi. Here we have Urvashi Kuhad. Welcome, madam, all the way from Itanagar. You can open your microphone.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor Jyotirmoy Prodhani. You've been very, very kind in your introduction. And I'm really sorry, you know, the network is so slow here. In fact, it's almost non-existent. So I was looking forward to this chat and hearing you giving me such a kind introduction and putting so much attention into what you were saying. I really feel quite humbled, you know. So thank you, Rupkatha. Thank you also, Dr. Urvashi, for being with us. I hope, you know, the session will...
Thank you, ma'am. And it's so delightful to have you in front of us, even if it is a virtual interaction. We are, you know, we are so happy.
I know, but really, I don't know where to start. I think Professor Jyotirmoy had said, you know...
Let's begin with a small sort of a query, just to set the ball rolling.
Right, right.
In fact, in the history of Northeast fiction in English, of course, we can take the name of Tensila Au for her, These Hills, my Homes, and of course, the second one, Lebanon, for my hit. She's an important name. However, the Legends of Panzer is a landmark achievement, not only for you as a writer, but also for the very idea of Northeast fiction in English as a whole. For this happens to be one of the most significant works which could be characterized as a typical Northeast story in terms of its unique narrative style, the landscape it has depicted, and the ethical worldview it has delineated. How this whole idea of Panzer came to your mind, and how did you plan this book, especially the structure of the work, which is quite unique, in fact.
Actually, Pensum started, you know, through kind of journalistic notes. You must remember, I was also a journalist at this time.
Yes.
And I have always been interested in the concept of, you know, myth, memory, time, myth, memory, meaning. What is meaning? Myth, memory, imagination. Is imagination greater than knowledge? You know, when you listen to some of the stories which I was hearing firsthand, it is you need to pay a lot of attention and you have to give a lot of time, you know. So coming back after many years of having been abroad and then rediscovering kind of the land and the people. So I was always interested in stories. I had my mother tongue, and this became like journalistic notes, you know. And we have something called the Abang. This is the classical Adi literature. I'm talking about the Adi tribe, which is the tribe I belong to in the Siang Valley and the Pasigat area. So the Abang I found was really fascinating because it has all the aspirations, you know, the spiritual longing in the life of man and what it means to be a human person. Now, the Abang is quite complex because every abang, there are several abangs, and this is the epic narrative. And every abang begins with the same kind of introduction, let's say a prelude, starting from, you know, the beginning, which was very dark, and it's like the creation myths, and then it branches out. So after that, the person who is reciting, you know, the performer who is the shaman, can branch out and take any of the branches of that big tree, as it were. So these stories fascinated me, and I found, you know, the whole worldview of people. If you're traveling in Arunachal Pradesh and you speak the language and you can really enter villages and sit with people, you can ask them about the forest, jungle lore, you know, the superstitions, and you'll find they always speak about the land in a kind of hesitant, cautious way. It's not as if they're trying to promote something, you know, which they think you might be interested in listening to. It's as if they were talking about some relative, you know, quietly and calmly. So this was the basis of all my notes. That's how, you know, the structure of the book. And then I have a little problem with the narrative chronological style, because my publishers, editors also were saying this is weaving back and forth, you know, but that's the way I like to deal with time and memory.
Those are very, very interesting thoughts, ma'am. And I've been holding a question inside me for a while, and this is also, ma'am, this is also an area of research that I have undertaken after coming across, you know, a couple of writers from the Northeast. I am teaching a paper on Indian writing in English, which has poetry from Robin Singh Gangom.
Yeah, yes.
But when ma'am, you say you belong to the Adi tribe, and you talked about a classical Adi literature. How relevant do you think, ma'am, it is to keep our oral traditions alive? I'm talking of folk culture, folk narratives, and to what extent have these influenced your style of writing or the themes of your writing?
I think the oral tradition, because it's so open to interpretation, you know, even in one village, we have different sub-clans. So they will be narrating it in a slightly different way. But the thread of the story, what I was saying, this big tree, you know, we all know the stories. So that kind of gives us our sense of community and thereby our sense of identity in one form or the other. And that binds us together, you know. Oh, you know the story of how the goat got its horns, and then you'll say, you know, so this is the folk culture that was transmitted orally. Now, of course, so many things are changing. I often think about an ecological term they use, you know, that the predicament of the place faithful. See, if you're trying to save the tiger, but the habitat is lost, it's going to be a really uphill battle. Similarly, it's something like that with our traditions. You know, if you're losing habitat or the place is changing so much, people are traveling out, or, you know, so all the things. So that becomes something to consider. You know? But nevertheless, I think because we are doing this translation and kind of appropriating the myths and keeping them, putting them into print, a kind of transcription work that is going on, I think that is important because they really hold a lot of ethical views as well, which I think are important for us. Personally, for me, you know, you find great consolation. Professor Jyotirmoy was reading about the word pensam and what it means. The last line, where the life of a man can be measured in the span of a song, that is my interpretation of one of the portions of Abang, there's something called the Penge, which is an elegy. And when a person dies, you can call a special shaman to perform this song. It is sung all night, and the person has to be well versed with the life of the deceased. And he starts on this very long journey, recounting. You remember that place, where your mother gave you that packet of rice, and they're traveling through all the childhood memories, kind of, again, that memory word. And they're traveling up towards that destination where they have to part. Then the singer will leave the person there, the soul of the person, and say, you take care and we'll be on our way, and we've recounted, and all your friends know where you're going. And then he takes the form of a bird, a hawk, and flies back in case the soul, tries to follow him, that kind of thing. But I think the concept, the imagination is quite beautiful, even though it was only orally chanted.
Madam, when it comes to narrative, Northeast narrative, what we call Northeast literary narrative,
yeah.
Though this is a fiction, of course, fiction is, we know this is a Western import here. But what makes literature from Northeast, its whole mode of presentation, the way it presents itself, which departs in a very significant way from other modes of writings that's happening in the same language in the parts of India. What do you think are the quintessential elements, components that together compose the typical Northeast ethos in the writings from this particular region, which might also have been having its resonance in your writings as well?
The Northeast ethos, I think Professor Jyotirmoy is throwing such hard questions at me, but I think there is a sense of, at least with people I meet, especially in rural parts of the Northeast, there is a sense of being truthful, great attention and great importance is given to being truthful. The truth matters. And I think this also, if somewhere along the way when you're writing, if you kind of discover a more authentic part of yourself, then I think this gives it a kind of, the ethical view. Because if you're truthful, and we have this worship of the sun and moon, not exactly worship, but the belief of sun and moon. So this has also to do with justice, with being true to yourself. We have a saying, in Adi, Ag Apram Gasilanka, which means, please wear your own heart, don't try to be something you are not. And I think at the present, many writers in the Northeast are trying to take this body of, lost or forgotten histories, bringing it out, but with a degree of being authentic.
Madam, this famous novel, The Black Hill, for which you have also received a Sahitya Akademi Award. History is one of the focal points there, which is the major inspiration for this particular work of fiction. But also you have used mythologies, the memories that you have spoken about, ecology. How do you allow all these elements to converge into the totality of a narrative? How do you treat, what is your treatment of history?
In the
from or from a native locale, from the perspective of native position?
Yeah, when I started The Black Hill, I stumbled on it by chance, the story of Father Crick, because I was doing research for another work, and then I found someone called Father Crick had come up to this village, not very far from Pasighat, which is my hometown. So I tried to find out a bit more, and it was not easy because people remember the British, when they had come up in the early 19th century, but nobody seemed to remember Father Crick. He had been there for 5 days, and a report of his stay at that time was in the Calcutta archives. So I got that translated into English by a Father Gilles. then that's how the story began. I could kind of see this image of this young priest, striding through the forest and then suddenly emerging. He was so keen on his mission to Tibet. He wasn't looking for Arunachal or to convert for a route into Tibet. And that's how things happen. But I felt history actually is, or I feel, it's a meeting place. There are so many possibilities that we don't really know what happened. Even in the Black Hill, the character of Gimur, right at the end, I have put, they didn't know what the history books would say about them. Maybe so and so died in a village war, and she herself just disappeared from history. So that was my way of being authentic, because Gimur is just it's a fictional character. The priest is true, the tribal chief is true, but Gimur was just there as a narrator. But I thought I should put in some truth and say, she no longer exists. So that was my way of being a little bit true to possibilities. Maybe there was such a person, who knows? But at this point, I had just created her. And I was also interested in the nature of spirituality. I felt if the priest and the tribal chief could have interacted for a bit more time, if things had been a little bit different, because he was beginning to see also that ultimately it's not about conversion or, preaching. It was just speaking the language of the heart, and life will believe what they believe. And that gives them the reason for being on earth, gives their life meaning. So that kind of thing I was trying to pose.
You also brought in a lot of memories and mythologies. The creation of a character against a historical background, which is a real story. Did you have some kind of hesitations to deal with the history? How did you negotiate with the possible, contour of history?
I did think, because a priest coming from the Paris foreign missions and a French Jesuit priest, I can't just make him think and feel, the way I wanted someone to think and feel, because he knows his theology, he was giving mass. I delved into the history of the Jesuits, Ignatius Loyola. Then I dragged my parents even on a trip from Guwahati to Shillong to the Don Bosco mission there. I went to Jesuit house in Guwahati, but nobody knew very much about Father Crick. It was the time of martyrs, when the Far East was more important. People were being killed in Japan. Recently, all kinds of films also have been made about that period. Father Crick and his assistant, Father Buri, both of them were just struggling on. I can't imagine how they traveled from Guwahati right up by elephant, by boat, on foot. I thought it was really quite remarkable, the passion these people had, because even now, it was easier for me to go to Paris to the foreign missions rather than to go where Father Crick had been on foot in my own home state, up in Anjao, because there was a landslip. I had to wait for the right time. Then I had to enlist the help of local politicians to give me a car, and some help. The language is different also there from Adi. So that kind of thing. So I was
You also
careful
mentioned
to
that
look
thing.
at, yeah, I was careful to look at his notes, and some things I imagined what he might have felt from the little things he left. He was like a anthropologist, actually. He became fascinated with the forest, the swing rope bridge. He was drawing pictures of Tibetan beads, prayer wheels. So that was how the book was written. And then when I actually went to that spot and met with people, some village elder remembered from his father's father that, oh yes, when I said, did no one claim Kajin Shah's body, the village, the Mishmi chief, I went to Dibrugarh jail also to look at, how he might have felt there, so suffocated, having lived so openly in the mountains. The first tribal man maybe to be hung in a Dibrugarh jail. What rage, what frustration he might have felt. But this man told me, no, how could we go? How would anyone go to claim his body? At that time it was impossible. But still, I made Gimur go and do a few things in the prison because there is a record in the British archives that 2 guards were killed and the French foreign missions had pleaded for mercy, for the killer, but they had hung him because of the death of the prison guard. So one of the prison guards, I made Gimur kill him, and that was how the story went.
We have a little bit of time left. Before that, Urvashi might be having one question, but I would just ask.
Please go ahead, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, that is. I think many of the audience here would also like to know that your location, Arunachal Pradesh. When it comes to the pan-Indian imagination of this particular place, that seems to be there's a geographic duality. It's the last place in our imagination, it's the frontier. Okay? But this is also geographically the first place. This is for the first time in India, the sun rises in your land.
Yeah.
So from that, you are the beginning, and from the mainstream, you are the ending, sort of. That's kind of paradox of this location. How do you look at your own place, and from the point of view of the mainstream, back to your own place, and how it might have reflected your writings as well?
About my writings, Professor, I don't know. It's just that, okay, I'm here and these are the stories. Or I was able to transcribe them, set them into another alphabet or language. But
There's, can you hear us, madam? There's some kind of audio glitches.
No, fine.
Has ma'am lost connection? Because I don't see her online.
Yeah, I think she'll be back.
Yeah, I think she's just temporarily taken a small break.
No, this is the usual issues. In Arunachal, we have a lot of connectivity problems. Today also in Shillong also we had power cuts.
Yes, sir, and I'm really hoping that things restore. I'm keeping my question intact till she's back.
Oh yes, of course. You should preserve this. I'm not sure whether
should one of us call him, sir, in case you have ma'am's number?
Yeah.
If you could bring her up.
Yes, she's trying to log in.
Okay, that's wonderful, sir. I'm sure she's been trying, and it's such a pity that her internet connection is giving her trouble.
Yeah, it's beyond us. We cannot help it.
Exactly, sir. It's not in our hands. Each of us would wish that that would be possible, but yes, John, absolutely, it's not in our hands. it's in the hands of up above.
What I thought, Urvashi, John is also there. I thought it's a typical Indian situation. But today I realized it's happening all over the world.
Yes, I think there's so much load on the internet system that it's crumbling. Sometimes it just gives up.
Yeah, she's still struggling to restore her connection.
Yes, no problem, sir. Yes, because we were nearly done, and I would like people to stay logged in because we are still in conversation with ma'am, and we're going to also allow the audience. I mean, I'm sure the audience is eagerly awaiting a chance for their questions to be flashed, and I mean, it's not every day that one gets to interact with Mamang, the great artist, a great a very well-known writer like Mamang Dai ma'am, and to interact with her. So for me, I don't know if I should continue going on, but I'm truly delighted to having been part of this event. It's a big privilege for me, sir.
Absolutely, for all of us, in fact, for me as well. Mamang Dai is a very popular writer when it comes to research. Even everybody wants to do work.
Oh yes. I have, in fact, very recently, sir, you remember I presented a paper, and that, of course, was not my introduction to her, but that led to my interest in learning more about ma'am, and many thanks to you, sir, for including me in this discussion.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Hello.
Yes,
yeah. Can you hear?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, you're audible, and we were talking of how wonderful
I'm trying to
have
get
you join
back.
us
Oh,
again.
there it comes. Yeah, I'm trying to get back on. Sorry.
That's all right. We can at least hear you.
You can hear, no?
Oh, yes, certainly.
Yeah. Okay.
Ma'am, one last question before we lose connection. Sir, please allow me permission to ask ma'am a question.
Yes.
Okay. Ma'am, I wanted to ask you about women characters, the women that are present in your tales, and what I observed is women occupy central spaces in your stories, in your tales, and how do you see their construction, their sense of their expressions, basically, and so you have also, through these women, through these characters, you've also at one point tried to make a subtle critique of both the native tribal society as well as the typical patriarchal and racial urban mainland. So how do you see these two kinds of womanhood, a kind of paradox that comes up? So on one hand, there is the the women emerging from the or present rather in the native tribal society, as well as women who are part of the urban mainland, and how they assert themselves in society.
I think I've always felt, women are the more enduring. Through history, we've seen there have been a lot of wild, wonderful warrior women, you take right from biblical times, or Cleopatra, Dido, Queen of Carthage, the Amazons, even in, the Ramayana, Mahabharata, things like that. But I have a close connection with my sisters, cousins, kith and kin in the villages. So I find them, the most fascinating look at womanhood, who endure, who do things, who fulfill obligations, who want more, but can still laugh about not having it, So that I think is a kind of lesson, you don't always have to be in the forefront for rights. You can take it anytime you want, really, in your own little circle. And we have patriarchal, society. It's very tough on, child marriage, this kind of thing, forced marriage. But things are changing. But within that context, if you take womanhood, what it means to be a woman, I think a lot of women are happy also if the men in the villages are in that same situation, where both are leaning on each other. So that is how I look at it. I think maybe there is not so much need to come and talk so much about women's rights when it is not in that environment, where they can actually acquire or have things and be emancipated woman that is, in the trend that kind of thing.
Right. Thank you so much, ma'am, for so wonderfully
but I think
answering
women
the question.
are much more flexible, resilient. And if you're in that position where you're resilient,
I can't hear you, ma'am. Is it my internet connection or yours?
All of ours.
All of ours, okay. That's fine then, sir. If I was just feeling annoyed at my own internet connection.
It keeps going.
No,
I can see you, Dr. Urvashi.
Okay, wonderful, ma'am. I just lost your voice in between, so I was wondering where ma'am is, and although I can't see you now, but
I was thinking of what to quickly say next. That's why you couldn't see me.
Yes, I was able to see you now.
You open up the session. Yes. This is open for your queries, discussions, and interactions. Yes, John.
Yes, ma'am. I was very impressed. Very, very, very heartfelt impressed.
Thank you.
And listening to you talk about this area, I didn't know about this area in your part of the world. And it just impressed me in some very, very solid ways. I have some background in epic literature. There's strong women characters there, and the retelling tradition. And forgive me if this is off topic and not connected, but I'm curious, do you see any connections between the older epic literature and the type of oral tradition the oral tradition of the epic literature that eventually was written down, and the oral retelling of what you've explained today and where it's going? Do you see any connections there, any similarities, any differences?
Between the oral retelling and
the oral retelling of our earliest epic works, Beowulf, the Green Knight, Homer and the Iliad, all of that eventually got written down, and it grew with each retelling because the bars are professional.
I think that's the great adventure, of epic narratives. We're lucky the whole world has these stories. You look at the Icelandic sagas, we're all watching, they've been made into films, Netflix again. Even when I saw Avatar, I thought this could be one of our stories. It's this huge, big tree we worship, that kind of thing. Right. So in the retelling, maybe it even evolves. But what is the core of that story? I think that stays, in the end. We have to win maybe, but at what cost? And we'll have to look at the environment around us. We'll need, wolves to help us, or maybe a polar bear will come out of the snow, that kind of thing. So I think that is really fascinating, that is the wonderment of living and seeing this continuity of human life and all other life, I think.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Well, in the interim that Sir is able to, are there other questions from the audience? Because I can see, there is a question in the chat box where it says here, to talk about there's this, I believe was an anonymous attendees, the ID says that is, he or she would like to know about the category of Northeast writing, and is there something that commonly ties all writing from the Northeast, or how do we categorize Northeast writing? Is it, is it a likable sort of, is it a permissible category, or is it, narrowing down of the categories way too much to call everything as Northeast literature?
Okay, thank you for your question. I think we have reached this point. Professor Jyotirmoy also was talking about, Arunachal being on the edge, so kind of liminal space, or what is beyond, at the moment, at least among my friends, all writers, the Northeast Writers Forum, we know we share the geographical affinities of the area. And because it is quite new, the writing coming out in English altogether, so there will be similarities of land, the landscape. But I think this is going to change, or it will change, because another generation of writers will see things differently. Already people are writing about so many other things, even just the simple image of a rain cloud or mist on your shoulder, that is becoming almost like science fiction. So we don't know where it will go, but that is fine also. It goes where it will, depending on the feeling of the author and this being aware of what you're trying to do, or because writing, I think, after all, it's that juxtaposition of, what you are and what you're trying to say, what you feel you want to share. You want to be left alone, but there is something you want to share, so that other person comes in, and that juxtaposition. But I'm not like this with my relatives, let's say, I'm totally different as a writer, and maybe as a person talking to them, but they are patient with me, and that is how things happen. But I think in the future, there will be other writings. The land is not here for us to promote and, delineate with a lot of, let's say, romance or love all the time. Things will change, and there will be other stories, I think.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. I hope, the anonymous attendee has gotten the rightful answer. I would request Jyotirmoy sir to perhaps steer this bit, because he's more informed about the students who are logged in and who may have questions.
Any other questions you have? We have a bit of time, though. It has to be followed by another session. Yes, just to have a cue from Mamang Dai, the Northeast. Northeast, the terminology itself is not accidental. It has come from historical terrain, historical trajectories. It's geoethnic factors are involved. Northeast also is an official terminology in our constitution, in the makeup. And besides, because of Northeast, we have become rather visible. Literature of every state is there, like Manipur literature is there, very rich. Assamese literature is there, very rich. In Tripura, they have literature, but Northeast as a kind of common platform for creative expression has happened in a very big way and in a very significant way, which had helped our writers, our voices to be heard as a collective entity. So it has really helped to gain visibility all across. So it has helped us to gain the kind of attention we wanted to draw. Otherwise, just for the fact that we had disparate traditions, like Assamese writing traditions, Manipuri writing traditions, that way. But when it comes to Northeast, then it becomes a formidable body of literary articulations. Is there any other questions from Urvashi? Can you check in the chat box if there is any?
Sir, I checked, and I believe those have all that has already been taken care of. And ma'am has been so patient and kind with us that she's as she answers each question as if it was the first question for her, with as much poise and ease.
Anybody?
Thank you, Urvashi.
Somebody can ask a question also, opening their mic. If we can pick up one or two questions very quickly.
Ma'am, in fact, just to put in between that, you mentioned a couple of keywords which led, which got me so alert. You talked about folk culture and folk studies. I am working on that, and that really interests me. In fact, science fiction is one of my areas of work. My PhD is on Indian science fiction, and that intrigues me. And it was so nice to hear from you that even though you are talking right now about classical literature, and you of course you talk about many things, but you there is an all-rounded view which inspires people like me to I'm in the academic field, and I teach, and this enthuses me with more confidence and energy to to be working more on such ideas.
Yeah, I think there'll be more.
I lost your voice, ma'am. Is it my internet connection? I believe.
There it is. Let's come back. Then we can conclude the session once she's back.
Yes. I think it's each of our internet connection that collectively goes wrong, sir, and then ma'am, this thing internet.
She's having a bit of problem with me.
Yes, it gets disconnected. Yes.
Now operating from an entertainment place, not from her own house.
I'm sure it's difficult. Yes, if the internet in metro cities can be so problematic, I can understand how it could be in a smaller state or town.
Yes. Let us wait for 1 or 2 minutes, and then we might have to begin our next session.
Yes, absolutely, sir. We've taken more time than what was allotted to us.
Now, because of the snacks, sometimes we have to have this.
Sir, can we end the session with your due permission?
In the session, let's begin.
Yeah. Okay, so should I give my concluding remarks?
Probably say thanks to Mamang Dai, madam, for being here despite all the difficulties. She has been here, very much engaged, and she was very involved with the session. I thank the organizers here, especially Tapash.
Yeah, okay. The connection is so bad.
Yes, madam, you're back here. We're concluding the session, madam. Thank you so much. We're really indebted to.
Thank you.
Hope to have you here in near future for longer sessions as well.
Yes, definitely, sir.
And also thanks from Rupkatha as well. Yeah, sir, please conclude. And
thank you, Rupkatha. Thank you.
Yeah, Rupkatha from Rupkatha Journal as well. And also, that we want you in our next Impact Talks, as you used to do, invite people. And we want you there. That's our. Also, thank you. A big thanks to you from the Rupkatha Journal on Interdisciplinary Studies in Humanity.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Urvashi.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Bye.
But I'm awaiting another.
Bye, ma'am.
Yes, Jyotirmoy, sir. I would wait another discussion with ma'am that would be much longer.
Of course.
Okay, thanks, Urvashi. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye.
We will arrange so.
For a long time. It was
Urvashi, ma'am, we will arrange so for that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Deepanjali, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Very good evening to all of you.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Urvashi, ma'am. Thank you, Professor Dai. And my sincere thanks to Professor Jyotirmoy Prodhani for this wonderful session. And we really had a lot of things to learn. And now we'll move on to our next session, that is session 12, and it will be chaired by Professor Jyotirmoy Prodhani. As we all know, he is professor in the Department of English, Northeastern Hill University. The session is titled Gender and Beyond. So over to you, Professor Prodhani.
Thank you, Deepanjali. Without spending much time, I'll come straight to the business. I would like to invite